In the hushed stillness of midnight, when the world slips beneath a veil of darkness and most creatures seek refuge in slumber, a peculiar visitor emerges. Tapping delicately yet insistently against the frosted window pane of the Peterson family home, a sleek silhouette appears, a mysterious cat with eyes that gleam like polished amber in the moonlight. Night after night, the rhythmic tapping continues, a gentle percussion against the glass that echoes through the quiet household. At first, the Petersons dismissed the visitor as merely another stray seeking shelter from the biting cold, or perhaps a morsel of food to quiet a hungry belly. "Just another neighborhood cat," Emily Peterson whispers to her husband as she pulls the curtains closed, trying to ignore the haunting gaze that seems to follow her every movement. But there's something profoundly different about this midnight caller, something that sends shivers down Emily's spine whenever their eyes meet through the glass barrier. The cat doesn't meow pitifully like other strays. It doesn't pace anxiously or claw desperately at the window. Instead, it sits with an almost regal patience, its posture unnaturally still, its gaze unwavering and deliberate. By the fifth night, young Sophie Peterson can no longer contain her curiosity. "Mom, I think it's trying to tell us something," she whispers, pressing her small palm against the cold glass. The cat responds by placing its paw directly opposite Sophie's hand, creating a perfect mirror image that makes the young girl gasp in wonder. What began as a nuisance has transformed into a nightly ritual that the family both anticipates and fears. The cat's behavior defies explanation. The way it arrives precisely at midnight, how it taps exactly 7 times before settling into its watchful pose, and most disturbing of all, how it seems to know each family member's name, responding with an attentive tilt of its head whenever they speak to one another. "There's something in its eyes," James Peterson confesses one evening, "something almost human." As weeks pass, the family notices subtle changes in their midnight visitor. A small scar appears above its right eye, then vanishes days later. Its coat shifts from midnight black to silver gray without explanation. And sometimes, in moments so brief they question their own eyes, they swear the cat's shadow stretches into a form much larger than its physical body. What does this enigmatic creature want from the Peterson family? Why has it chosen their window, their home, their lives to infiltrate? As the mystery deepens, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This is no ordinary stray seeking sanctuary. In the quiet suburbs where extraordinary events rarely disturb the peaceful rhythm of everyday life, the Peterson family finds themselves caught in an unsettling mystery that defies all explanation. Night after night, as the grandfather clock in their living room strikes 12, the mysterious feline appears at their window, not a minute earlier, not a second later, with a punctuality that seems almost supernatural. "It's back again," Sophie whispers, her small face illuminated by moonlight as she peers through a gap in the curtains. The cat sits motionless on the windowsill, its silhouette carved against the darkness, eyes reflecting an eerie intelligence that makes Emily's skin prickle with unease. Something about those eyes, deep and knowing, suggests this is no ordinary creature of the night. James, determined to solve the mystery, places a small bowl of premium tuna on the porch, the kind that would make any stray abandon its caution. Yet when morning comes, the food remains untouched, not a single morsel disturbed. They try again with warm milk, gourmet cat food, even freshly cooked chicken, delicacies no hungry stray could resist, but the offerings remain rejected night after night. "What kind of cat doesn't eat?" Emily wonders aloud, her voice tinged with growing apprehension. The family watches from behind partially drawn curtains as the feline visitor performs its nightly ritual. 7 deliberate taps against the glass, followed by hours of unwavering observation, its gaze penetrating the walls of their home as if searching for something hidden within. As days turn to weeks, the question burns deeper into their thoughts. Why their house? Among all the homes in the neighborhood, some warmer, some with known cat lovers, why has this mysterious creature fixated on their window? Their family? The cat never approaches other houses, never strays from its path directly to their home. "It's like it's waiting for something," Sophie observes, her innocent words carrying a weight that hangs heavy in the air. The family begins marking the cat's position on the window, noticing how it sits in precisely the same spot each night, its gaze always directed toward the antique cabinet in their living room, a family heirloom filled with old photographs and forgotten treasures. Sleep becomes elusive as the strange ritual continues. Neighbors begin to notice the family's fatigue, the dark circles under their eyes. But how could they explain? Who would believe that a cat, a creature that refuses all sustenance, returns with clockwork precision each night, its presence growing more commanding, more purposeful with each visit? Something ancient and knowing lives behind those amber eyes, something that has chosen the Peterson family. But the question that keeps them awake at night is not just why, but what will happen when they finally discover the answer. When they finally meet the midnight visitor face to face, their world turns upside down. On the 23rd night of the mysterious cat's appearance, the Peterson family makes a decision that will forever alter the course of their lives. As the familiar tapping begins against their window precisely at midnight, James exchanges a meaningful glance with Emily before slowly reaching for the latch. "We need to understand what it wants," he whispers, his voice barely audible above the pounding of his heart. Sophie stands behind her parents, clutching her mother's sweater, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination as her father carefully slides the window open, inviting the night air and the mysterious visitor into their home. But what happens next defies all expectation. The opening of the barrier between them does not entice the feline to enter as any ordinary cat might do. Instead, it remains perfectly still on the windowsill, its posture rigid and alert, neither retreating from the open invitation nor accepting it. The family stands frozen, mere inches from the creature that has haunted their nights for weeks, yet it makes no move to cross the threshold. "It's like there's an invisible wall," Sophie murmurs, reaching out a trembling hand that stops just short of touching the cat's sleek fur. The moonlight reveals details they couldn't see before. A subtle pattern in its coat that shifts like constellations when it moves. A small golden marking on its chest, shaped like a perfect crescent moon. Most striking of all is the undeniable evidence that this is no desperate stray. Its coat gleams with health, its body well-nourished and strong. Emily leans closer, her professional veterinarian's eye assessing what sits before them. "Look at its paws," she breathes in disbelief. "No calluses, no wear from street living. And that collar, it's nearly invisible against its fur, but it's there." A thin band of material that seems to shimmer between visibility and shadow encircles the cat's neck, bearing no tags, no identification, nothing to suggest where it comes from or to whom it belongs. The cat's emerald eyes never break their penetrating gaze, fixed not on the family, but beyond them, toward the antique cabinet that stands against the far wall of their living room. Something about its unwavering focus sends a chill through James that has nothing to do with the night air now flowing through the open window. "It's waiting for us to do something," he realizes aloud, following the direction of the cat's gaze to the cabinet that has been in his family for generations. "It's not here for food or shelter. It's here for something inside our home." As the grandfather clock chimes the half hour, the cat rises suddenly to its feet, its body tense with purpose. For the first time since its appearance, it makes a sound, a single clear note that resonates through the room like the ring of crystal, seeming to say, "Time is running out." For 37 consecutive nights, the mysterious feline had appeared at the Peterson family window, its ritual as predictable as the moon's journey across the night sky. The family had unwittingly built their evenings around these visitations, Sophie completing her homework by the window, Emily placing a chair nearby to observe the enigmatic visitor, James finding himself unable to sleep until he'd verified the cat's arrival. But on the 38th night, as the grandfather clock's hands aligned at midnight, the familiar tapping never came. The windowsill remained hauntingly vacant, the yard beyond shrouded in an unusual stillness that seemed to hold its breath. "Maybe it's just late," Sophie whispered, her small face pressed against the cold glass, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Minutes stretched into hours as the family maintained their vigil, the absence of their mysterious visitor creating a void that somehow felt more intrusive than its presence ever had. Morning arrived with no sign of the cat, leaving behind a strange emptiness that permeated the household like a thick fog. "I never thought I'd miss it," Emily confessed over untouched breakfast plates, her voice tinged with an emotion she couldn't quite name. The family moved through their day with distracted minds, each secretly wondering if they had imagined the entire episode, a shared delusion born from the monotony of suburban life. As dusk settled over their neighborhood the following evening, James found himself drawn to the window, where their visitor had appeared so faithfully. Running his fingers along the glass, He felt something that made his blood run cold. Tiny indentations in the smooth surface, barely visible to the naked eye. "Emily, Sophie, come look at this," he called, his voice trembling slightly as he angled a flashlight against the window. In the harsh beam, what had seemed like random scratches suddenly revealed themselves as deliberate marks, delicate lines etched into the glass with impossible precision. "It's not random," Sophie breathed, her young mind making connections faster than her parents. "It's a pattern, like constellations." The intricate scratches formed a series of interconnected dots and lines that mimicked no earthly alphabet, yet conveyed an undeniable intentionality. Emily traced the marks with a shaking finger, a chill running through her body as she realized the impossible truth. The scratches were on the inside of the glass. "How could it have done this without entering our home?" she whispered, the implications sending a wave of unease through the family. Most disturbing of all was what lay at the center of the enigmatic pattern, a perfect etching of their antique cabinet, rendered with such detail that even the ornate keyhole was visible, surrounded by what appeared to be directional lines, all pointing inward toward the cabinet's forgotten contents. As night fell once more on their now quiet home, the family couldn't shake the feeling that the cat's disappearance wasn't an end to their mystery. It was merely a turning point. The midnight visitor had left them a message, a map perhaps, and somewhere in the darkness, they sensed it was waiting for them to follow where it led. What the desperate midnight visitor reveals will shatter everything they thought they knew. Nature unleashes its fury as a violent storm batters the quiet neighborhood, sheets of rain cascading from an angry sky, turning familiar landscapes into blurred shadows. Inside their home, the Peterson family has almost convinced themselves that the mysterious cat was merely a strange chapter in their lives, one that had finally closed. 7 nights have passed since the cryptic message was etched upon their window. 7 nights of ordinary existence. 7 nights of questioning their own memories. Until the sound comes, not the familiar methodical tapping they had grown accustomed to, but a frantic, desperate scratching that cuts through the storm's rage with haunting urgency. "It's back!" Sophie gasps, the flash of lightning illuminating a sight that steals the breath from her lungs. On their windowsill, barely recognizable, crouches the once immaculate visitor. Its sleek coat now hangs in matted clumps, water streaming down its trembling body. The mysterious collar that once shimmered with otherworldly elegance now dangles loosely, damaged and dull. Most shocking of all are its eyes, the same piercing emerald that had observed them so coolly now wide with something the family has never seen in them before: raw, undisguised fear. The cat's plaintive cries rise above the thunderclaps, its paws working frantically against the glass, leaving desperate streaks that erase parts of the cryptic pattern it had previously left. This is not the composed, mysterious sentinel that had watched them for over a month. This is a creature in dire peril, its dignity stripped away by whatever force has driven it back to their window. "We can't leave it out there," Emily whispers, her maternal instincts overriding the lingering caution she's held. James hesitates, his hand hovering over the latch as memories of the cat's previous refusal to enter flood his mind. Something had changed. Something profound enough to transform their enigmatic visitor into this desperate, pleading creature. "Dad, please," Sophie begs, tears welling in her eyes as another crack of lightning illuminates the pitiful scene. The decision crystallizes in an instant. Whatever mystery surrounds this animal, whatever strange purpose brought it to their lives, basic compassion demands action. The window slides open, rain immediately spattering the floor as the howling wind invades their home. For one breathless moment, the cat remains frozen on the sill, its eyes darting between the family members as if making a final assessment. Then, with a grace that defies its bedraggled appearance, it leaps into their living room, bringing with it the scent of rain, earth, and something else, something ancient and undefinable. Water pools beneath its shivering form as it stands in the center of their living room, suddenly still despite its previous desperation. Its eyes, now luminous in the dim light, fix once more on the antique cabinet before returning to each family member in turn. Then, with deliberate slowness, it opens its mouth, not to meow or cry, but to release something that falls with a metallic clink to the hardwood floor. A key, small, ornate, and unmistakably old. A perfect match for the cabinet that has stood locked in their home for generations. As raindrops continue their relentless percussion against the window panes, the Peterson family stands transfixed, watching their enigmatic guest with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. The small ornate key lies untouched on the floor where it fell, gleaming dully in the lamplight, a physical manifestation of the mystery that has consumed their lives. Emily, ever practical, prepares a small feast fit for a feline royalty: warm cream in a shallow dish, premium tuna flaked to perfection, even small morsels of freshly cooked chicken. She arranges these offerings in a semicircle around the still dripping visitor, her veterinarian's instincts driving her to care for this clearly distressed creature. But the cat shows no interest in the lavish meal. Despite its bedraggled appearance and the ordeal it has obviously endured, it ignores every morsel, every comfort extended. Instead, it begins a methodical patrol of the living room, its movements precise and purposeful. 7 steps forward, pause, turn, 7 steps back, a pattern that repeats with mechanical precision as its gaze remains fixed on the front door. "It's like it's waiting for something, or someone," James whispers, the hairs on his arms rising despite the warmth of their home. The cat's pacing creates a perfect line between the door and the antique cabinet, an invisible corridor of energy that seems to crackle with unspoken tension. Sophie, her young eyes sharper than her parents', notices it first, a small object catching the light as the cat turns. "There's something on its collar," she exclaims, dropping to her knees to peer closer at their visitor. The cat freezes, allowing the child's inspection in a way that feels deliberately accommodating. The collar itself appears otherworldly, a band of material that seems to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. But it's what hangs from it that draws their collective breath. A small metal tag, intricately engraved with symbols that match those scratched into their window, and below them, a name written in delicate, flowing script: Whisper. "How did we miss this before?" Emily wonders aloud, reaching tentatively toward the tag. The cat, Whisper, allows her touch for just a moment before resuming its relentless pacing, its eyes never leaving the front door. As midnight gives way to the small hours, the family's exhaustion battles with their curiosity. They take turns watching their peculiar guest, who shows no signs of fatigue, no inclination toward rest or comfort. Its emerald eyes remain alert, its posture tense with anticipation. In the deepest part of night, when even the storm outside is quieted to a gentle patter, James notices something that sends ice through his veins. The shadow cast by Whisper against the wall doesn't match its physical form. Where there should be the silhouette of a domestic cat, there stretches instead the unmistakable outline of something much larger, something with an almost human-like posture that seems to be reaching toward the antique cabinet with elongated limbs. Dawn approaches, and still Whisper paces, neither eating nor sleeping, its purpose as mysterious as its sudden return, a silent sentinel guarding against something only it can perceive. As morning light filters through rain-washed windows, James cradles the antique key in his palm, its weight somehow heavier than its small size should allow. Emily gently coaxes Whisper into momentary stillness, her fingers trembling slightly as she carefully turns the mysterious tag to read what's engraved on its reverse side. "There's another name," she whispers, her voice barely audible as she traces the weathered inscription. The family leans closer, squinting at the faded lettering that time has nearly erased. "Oliver," Sophie reads aloud, the name hanging in the air like a forgotten memory seeking recognition. An electric current seems to pass through Whisper at the sound of this name. Its emerald eyes widen, pupils dilating to perfect circles as its gaze locks with Sophie's in a moment of connection so intense it makes the young girl step back involuntarily. For the briefest moment, the family swears they see something impossibly human flash across the cat's features: recognition, relief, and beneath it all, a profound sadness. "Oliver," James repeats, the name stirring something in his own memory. Wasn't that the name of the boy in those old newspaper clippings Grandma kept? The ones about the disappearance in the 1950s. Emily pulls out her phone, fingers flying across the screen as she searches local missing pet registries. "Nothing," she confirms, scrolling through page after page of lost animal reports. No Oliver, no cats matching this description, nothing even close. The mystery deepens with each passing moment. The connection between a missing child from decades past and their midnight visitor stretching the boundaries of rational explanation. A sudden shaft of sunlight breaks through the clouds, casting a golden beam across the living room floor, directly onto the antique cabinet. In that same instant, Whisper's demeanor transforms completely. The methodical pacing stops as the cat freezes, every muscle tense, ears swiveling toward the front window like satellite dishes seeking a distant signal. Without warning, Whisper launches itself across the room in a blur of motion, landing with precision on the windowsill. Its previous composure vanishes completely as it paws frantically at the glass, body pressed against the pane, desperate meows escalating in pitch and urgency. The family rushes to the window, following the cat's fixed gaze out into their front yard. "There's nothing there," James says, scanning the rain-soaked landscape. But Whisper's behavior suggests otherwise, its cries now taking on an almost human quality of desperation, its paws leaving smeared prints against the glass as it attempts to communicate something of vital importance. Emily notices it first, the subtle shifting of shadows near their garden gate, a darkness that seems deeper than it should be, moving against the wind rather than with it. "James," she whispers, gripping her husband's arm with sudden force. "I don't think we're looking for what Whisper sees. I think we're looking for what's looking for Whisper." As if confirming her suspicion, the darkness at the garden gate coalesces, taking on a more defined shape. Tall, unnaturally thin, and standing perfectly still, its attention fixed on their window with palpable malevolence. The shadow figure by the garden gate sends waves of inexplicable dread through the Peterson family, its unnatural stillness more terrifying than any movement could be. Whisper's cries transform into a sound none of them believed a cat could make, a high-pitched wail that vibrates through their bones and echoes in their minds long after it fades from their ears. In a blur of movement that leaves them momentarily stunned, Whisper launches from the windowsill, claws scrabbling frantically against the glass, until James makes a split-second decision. Throwing open the door, he watches as the cat bolts into the storm-drenched night, a streak of motion against the darkness. "We can't let it go!" Sophie cries, already pulling on her raincoat. The family exchanges a single glance that communicates everything words cannot. They've come too far into this mystery to abandon its central figure now. Within moments, they plunge into the deluge, the key from the cat's collar clutched tightly in James's white-knuckled grip. Whisper moves with supernatural speed, yet somehow remains just visible enough to follow, pausing at corners, glancing back with those luminous eyes that seem to plead for their continued pursuit. The rain lashes against their faces as they stumble after their guide, feet slipping on muddy ground, hearts pounding with a mixture of exertion and mounting dread. "Where is it taking us?" Emily gasps, as Whisper veers suddenly off the manicured neighborhood sidewalk, diving into an overgrown path that most locals pretend doesn't exist. Thorny branches claw at their clothing, the vegetation seeming almost alive in its resistance to their passage. Yet Whisper navigates the forgotten trail with the confidence of one who has traveled it countless times before. The path ends abruptly at a rusted iron gate, hanging precariously from a single hinge. Beyond it looms a structure that seems to absorb rather than reflect the occasional flashes of lightning. The old Blackwood house, a neighborhood legend, whispered about by children but carefully avoided in adult conversation. It hasn't been occupied since the disappearances in the 50s, James breathes, recognition dawning as childhood warnings flood back into his consciousness. The Victorian mansion stands like a wound in reality, its windows sealed with weathered boards, porch sagging beneath the weight of decades of neglect. Vines crawl up its facade like grasping fingers, nature attempting to reclaim what human tragedy has abandoned. Whisper sits before the gate, suddenly calm, its eyes reflecting twin flames that have no visible source. As lightning illuminates the scene, Sophie points with a trembling finger to something carved into the ancient wood of the front door, a symbol identical to those etched on their window, on Whisper's tag, and on the mysterious key that now seems to pulse with warmth in James's palm. "It wants us to go inside," Emily whispers, her voice barely audible above the storm. The shadow they glimpsed by their garden gate seems to flicker at the edges of their vision, drawing closer with each passing moment, leaving them caught between two terrifying choices: retreat to the safety of their home, or follow Whisper into a house that seems to breathe with malevolent anticipation. As thunder cracks overhead, illuminating the decaying Victorian in stark flashes of blue-white light, Whisper's demeanor transforms once more. The eerie calm that possessed the cat at the gate gives way to frantic desperation as it hurls itself against the weathered door, claws scraping against ancient wood with an urgency that borders on madness. "It's getting closer," Sophie whispers, her eyes fixed on the writhing darkness that seems to flow between the trees behind them. approaching with deliberate patience. The family huddled on the sagging porch, faces an impossible choice: the unknown horror pursuing them, or the forgotten secrets waiting within. The key trembles in James's hand, seeming to pull toward the tarnished lock as if drawn by magnetic force. With one fluid motion, he slides it into place, a perfect fit. The mechanism turns with surprising ease, releasing a sigh of stale air as the door swings inward on protesting hinges, revealing a yawning darkness that seems to breathe with anticipation. Whisper darts between their legs, vanishing into the gloom before anyone can react. With one final glance at the approaching shadow, the family steps across the threshold, closing the door against whatever hunts them. The sound of the lock engaging echoes with terrible finality through the forgotten house. "I can't see anything," Emily whispers, her voice tight with fear as she clutches Sophie's hand. James fumbles with his phone, activating its flashlight to reveal a scene frozen in time. A living room where dust motes dance in the beam of light, furniture draped in yellowed sheets like silent ghosts, and walls lined with bookshelves sagging under the weight of forgotten knowledge. Scattered across every surface are papers, newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, photographs curling at the edges, all abandoned mid-research, as if whoever collected them had simply vanished in the middle of their work. Sophie picks up a faded photograph, wiping away decades of dust to reveal a family not unlike their own, standing proudly before the very house they now stand in, when it was still a home filled with light and life. 1952, she reads from the back, her voice small in the oppressive silence. The Olivers. The name hits them like a physical blow, connections forming with dizzying speed. Before they can process the implications, a sound cuts through their thoughts, faint at first, then growing clearer, a soft, muffled whimpering that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hello?" James calls, his voice cracking with tension. The whimpering stops instantly, replaced by a terrible silence that presses against their ears like cotton wool. Then, just as their nerves reach breaking point, it comes again, not from the shadows surrounding them, but from below their feet. "There's someone in the basement," Emily breathes, her medical training kicking in as she recognizes the sound of distress. Whisper appears suddenly at the edge of a darkened hallway, its eyes reflecting the flashlight beam with supernatural intensity as it meows once, a clear summons that brooks no argument. The family exchanges glances, a wordless communication passing between them. Whatever waits beneath this house of forgotten memories has been waiting for a very long time. And somehow, impossibly, they've been chosen to find it. Following Whisper's unwavering lead, the Peterson family descends creaking stairs into the basement's suffocating darkness. Their flashlight beam cuts through decades of undisturbed air, revealing cobwebs that hang like ancient tapestries from the low ceiling. The cat moves with newfound purpose, weaving between forgotten relics of a lifelong abandoned, rusty tools hanging on walls, cardboard boxes disintegrating with age, and children's toys frozen in time. The whimpering grows louder, more distinct, unmistakably human yet somehow not quite right, as if filtered through layers of reality. Whisper stops before what appears to be an ordinary closet door nestled in the corner of the basement, its wooden frame sealed shut by years of neglect and something more deliberate, a heavy padlock, securing a bolt that has no business being on a closet door. "Someone wanted to keep something in," James whispers, his voice barely audible as he examines the lock. "Or keep something out." The key from Whisper's collar doesn't fit this modern mechanism. This was added long after the house was abandoned, its shiny surface a stark contrast to the decaying surroundings. Emily's medical instincts override caution as another pitiful whimper emanates from behind the door. Grabbing a rusted crowbar from among the hanging tools, she attacks the rotting doorframe with surprising strength. "We need to get in there now," she insists, the maternal determination in her voice brooking no argument. Wood splinters and metal groans as the family works together, their efforts spurred on by increasingly desperate sounds from within. With a final crack of protesting timber, the door gives way, swinging open to reveal absolute darkness and a sudden, terrified silence. James directs his flashlight into the small space, illuminating what can only be described as a makeshift prison. The beam settles on a small figure huddled in the corner, a child, her wide eyes reflecting the light like a frightened animal's. She can't be more than 6 years old, her frail body clothed in a nightdress that might once have been white, but is now gray with dirt and time. Her matted hair frames a face hollow with hunger, lips cracked from dehydration. "It's okay," Sophie whispers, dropping to her knees at a non-threatening distance. "We're here to help you." The child clutches a small stuffed bear to her chest, its fabric worn threadbare from desperate embracing. She opens her mouth as if to speak, but no sound emerges beyond a dry rasp. Emily immediately reaches for the water bottle in her coat pocket, moving slowly to avoid frightening the terrified child further. As the girl sips tentatively, James notices something that makes his blood freeze: a small identification tag sewn into the collar of her nightdress. Brushing away decades of dust reveals faded embroidery. Oliver, Margaret, 1946. Whisper approaches the child with gentle familiarity, pressing against her side with a nurturing gesture that seems impossible between strangers. The girl's trembling hand reaches out to stroke the cat's fur, her cracked lips forming a single word that echoes through the hidden room with devastating clarity. "Oliver?" The family exchanges horrified glances as impossible realization dawns. This child disappeared over 70 years ago, yet here she sits, unchanged by time, clutching a stuffed animal that bears the same name as the mysterious cat that led them to her rescue. Sirens wail through the previously silent neighborhood, emergency lights painting the abandoned Victorian in surreal pulses of red and blue. Neighbors emerge from their homes in various states of undress, drawn by the commotion that has shattered their peaceful existence. They watch in stunned silence as paramedics carefully carry a small, blanket-wrapped figure from the decaying house that most pretend doesn't exist. Emily rides in the ambulance, her veterinarian's training providing enough medical knowledge to communicate the child's condition to the emergency responders. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, possible hypothermia, she reports clinically, though her trembling hands betray the emotional impact of their discovery. The girl clings weakly to her stuffed bear with one hand, the other firmly tangled in Whisper's fur, the cat refusing to leave her side despite the paramedics' initial protests. At the hospital, a flurry of activity engulfs them as doctors rush to stabilize the frail child. The Petersons find themselves in a sterile waiting room, still damp from the storm, attempting to explain their impossible story to increasingly skeptical police officers. "You followed your cat to an abandoned house in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm?" Detective Reynolds repeats, his pen hovering over his notepad. Before James can formulate a response that doesn't sound completely irrational, a commotion at the entrance draws everyone's attention. A woman bursts through the doors, her face bearing the haunted look of someone who has lived through every parent's worst nightmare. "They found her? They really found Emma?" she gasps, collapsing into a nearby chair as a social worker attempts to prepare her for what lies ahead. Reynolds' demeanor transforms instantly. "The Caldwell girl?" he whispers to his partner, who nods in confirmation. The detectives excuse themselves, leaving the Peterson family to piece together the truth from fragments of conversation that drift their way. 2 weeks ago, 5-year-old Emma Caldwell had vanished during a family picnic at the park adjacent to their neighborhood. Despite exhaustive searches, not a single trace had been found, until tonight. Somehow the child had wandered into the abandoned Blackwood house and become trapped in that hidden room, a space unknown even to search teams who had checked the building in the initial investigation. When Emma is stable enough for brief questioning, her fragmented account confirms what Whisper's behavior had already revealed. The cat had found her on the first night, slipping through a broken basement window too small for human rescuers. For 14 desperate days, Oliver had remained her constant companion, somehow bringing her enough water to survive, keeping her warm during cold nights, and finally, when her strength was failing, seeking help in the most extraordinary way imaginable. "He told me someone would come," Emma whispers, her voice raspy from disuse as she strokes Whisper's fur. "He promised he wouldn't let me disappear like the others." A chill runs through the room at these words, the implications too disturbing to contemplate. The medical staff exchange knowing glances. Trauma often manifests in children through imaginary companions and impossible narratives. But the Peterson family knows different. They've seen the shadows that hunt in the night, felt the weight of the antique key, and witnessed a cat that refuses food, yet somehow sustained a child's life against impossible odds. As dawn breaks over the hospital, James makes a silent promise to uncover the truth behind the house that time forgot and the mysterious cat that seems to guard its secrets with ancient, unwavering vigilance. In the sterile hospital room where machines monitor every flutter of Emma Caldwell's fragile heartbeat, the 5-year-old survivor sits propped against starched pillows, her once hollow cheeks slowly regaining color with each passing hour. Whisper, now known to the world as Oliver, lies curled protectively at her side, his emerald eyes never straying far from her face, as if afraid she might vanish if he looks away even for a moment. When Emma speaks, her voice carries the weighted wisdom of someone who has stared into the abyss and returned. The adults in the room, her parents, doctors, the Peterson family, lean forward, captivated by the impossible tale that spills from her innocent lips. "I was so scared at first," she whispers, small fingers absently stroking Oliver's fur. "It got dark so fast and I couldn't find the way out. I tried all the doors, but they were locked or stuck." Her eyes cloud with remembered terror as she recounts wandering deeper into the abandoned house, eventually stumbling down rickety basement stairs where a single misstep sent her tumbling into the hidden room, the door swinging shut behind her with terrible finality. "I screamed until my voice was gone," Emma continues, her gaze distant. "But then, on the first night, I heard scratching." She describes how Oliver appeared like a guardian angel, squeezing through a tiny gap where the wall had crumbled away behind a heavy shelf, a passage too small for human rescuers to discover, too insignificant to be noticed during hasty searches. The room falls silent as Emma reveals the extraordinary bond that formed in the darkness. "Oliver stayed with me every day, keeping me warm when I got cold." Her voice strengthens with wonder as she recalls how the cat would disappear each night, only to return with moisture clinging to his fur, water she could lick from his coat to stave off deadly dehydration. "He brought me hope," she says simply, describing how Oliver would leave precisely at midnight, returning before dawn with renewed determination. "He told me he was looking for someone who could hear him, someone who would understand." Tears stream down Emily Peterson's face as Emma describes the final days, when her strength began to fail and consciousness slipped away from her. "I stopped answering Oliver," she admits, her voice barely audible. "That's when he got scared, really scared." The medical staff exchanged knowing glances at this anthropomorphization, but the Peterson family understands the profound truth in her words. They had witnessed firsthand the transformation in Oliver's behavior, from methodical observer to desperate messenger when Emma's condition became critical. "He promised he wouldn't let me join the others," Emma whispers, a statement that sends a collective chill through the room. The others who got lost in that house and never came out. As reporters gather outside the hospital and animal rescue organizations prepare commendations for the hero cat of Millfield, the Peterson family alone grapples with the deeper mystery. For they know what others do not, that Oliver's tag dates back decades, that the shadows hunting him are very real, and that somewhere in their antique cabinet lies a connection to a history of disappearances that stretch back further than anyone has dared to investigate. While the world celebrates a miraculous rescue, Sophie Peterson watches Oliver's eyes track something invisible across the hospital room, something that retreats from the light, biding its time in the shadows, waiting for night to fall once more. Television cameras crowd the hospital entrance, reporters jostling for position as Emma Caldwell emerges into the sunlight for the first time in 2 weeks. Her parents flank her wheelchair, their faces radiant with the special glow that comes only to those who have faced the abyss of loss and been granted a second chance. In Emma's lap sits Oliver, his emerald eyes alert as ever, his once bedraggled fur now gleaming after careful grooming by hospital staff who bent every rule to keep him by the child's side. The crowd erupts in applause at the sight of them. The little girl and the cat, whose inexplicable determination has captured hearts across the nation. "Hero Cat leads rescuers to missing child," the headlines proclaim in bold type. Photographers' flashes glinting off the special medallion now hanging from Oliver's collar. An official commendation from the Millfield Police Department, the first ever awarded to a non-service animal. Experts appear on morning shows, attempting to explain his behavior through instinct and evolutionary bonding, their scientific explanations falling woefully short of the truth the Peterson family witnessed firsthand. "He knew exactly what he was doing," James tells a reporter who corners him outside the hospital. "He chose us specifically. He had a plan from the very beginning." The statement raises eyebrows among viewers, but those who were there, who saw the deliberate patterns, the impossible intelligence behind those feline eyes. No, he speaks nothing but truth. 2 weeks after the rescue, when Emma has regained enough strength to visit, the Peterson family hosts a small gathering in their living room. The antique cabinet stands open for the first time in generations, its contents carefully examined and cataloged. Newspaper clippings of disappearances dating back to the 1890s, journals documenting strange occurrences in the old Blackwood house, and photographs of children who vanished without a trace, their faces preserved in sepia tones and forgotten grief. "We still don't understand everything," Emily admits, watching Oliver move between Emma and Sophie with devoted attention. "But we know enough to recognize a guardian when we see one." When the Caldwells prepare to leave, a moment of tension fills the room. Emma clutches Oliver to her chest, tears welling in her eyes as she faces the prospect of separation from her savior. Her mother kneels beside her, stroking her daughter's hair with infinite tenderness. "Sweetheart," she whispers, "I think Oliver has more work to do here." The wisdom in those words settles over the room like a blessing. Some bonds transcend explanation, some purposes extend beyond a single rescue. As Oliver leaps gracefully from Emma's arms to the windowsill where he first appeared, his silhouette outlined against the setting sun, the Peterson family makes a silent vow that appears to please him. His emerald eyes blinking slowly in that special way cats have of showing absolute trust. He has chosen them as his family, his home base for whatever mysterious vigil he maintains. And they have chosen him, accepting both the wonder and the responsibility that comes with harboring a guardian of the forgotten, a protector against shadows that most prefer not to see. At night, when Oliver takes his place at Sophie's bedroom window, watching the darkness with ancient vigilance, the Peterson family sleeps peacefully, knowing some mysteries are better embraced than solved, and some heroes require nothing more than a warm place to rest between missions. As twilight settles over the Peterson home, the family gathers on their porch, watching Oliver patrol the perimeter of their yard with the same vigilance that once drew them into an extraordinary rescue. "What if we'd ignored him?" Sophie whispers. The question that has haunted them all finally given voice. Just one more night without answering his call. Her words trail off, the unthinkable alternative hanging heavy in the air. James wraps an arm around his daughter's shoulders, his gaze following Oliver's graceful movements. "Emma's doctor said she wouldn't have survived another day," he acknowledges quietly. "All those nights we thought he was just a stray looking for food. He was actually looking for help." Emily reaches for her husband's hand, remembering the desperate scratching that finally broke through their hesitation. "Sometimes the most important messages come from the most unexpected messengers," she reflects, watching as Oliver pauses to look back at them, his emerald eyes gleaming with ancient wisdom. The mystery of Oliver, his origins, his impossible age, his connection to the forgotten house, may never be fully understood. But the truth of his purpose stands clear against the gathering darkness. A silent guardian, moving between worlds, refusing to abandon those lost in shadows others cannot see. A small act of kindness can change a life. Oliver wasn't just looking for shelter, he was trying to save someone. And in doing so, he found a family of his own, a safe harbor from which to continue his mysterious vigil, reminding us all that sometimes, answering an unexpected knock at the window might be the beginning of a journey that saves not just one life, but your own as well.